All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of my daily vlog. This is daily vlog number 33, and today I want to talk about artistic shit. Specifically, I want to talk about acting artistic shit. The reason I phrase it that way, for anyone that doesn't know, I was at one point an actor. I had an agent. I've actually been paid to be an actor one time. I was an extra in an independent film that was filmed in Wisconsin, where I live. And it exists on the internet as well. I've named it a billion other times. So if people want to find it, I am in the scene that I am in lasts for like 10 minutes, barely. You can see me, though I am, again, this was like 15 years ago. So I am very young. And I had long hair at the time. I had hair down to about my shoulders at that point, which is one of the reasons I got cast in the film, because it was a religious film. It was all right. I'll tell the whole thing. The movie's called The Road to Emmaus. It exists on YouTube. You can find it, and it's basically about. There's a story in the Gospels about. After Jesus is crucified and after his resurrection, there's this pair of people walking down the road to Emmaus, which is a city. And while they're there, they are kind of discussing the Bible or it wasn't the Bible then, but the religious texts of Judaism. This was actually a really common thing for Jewish people to do at the time. It was kind of a common, not really small talk, but it was something that you did with your friends fairly often. And if you watch something like if you watch like the musical Fiddler on the Roof, whether you watch it on stage, you watch the movie version of it, which was brilliant. In the song, "If I Were a Rich Man," one of the things that he talks about is that if he were rich, he could sit around just talking about the sacred texts all day, because that was something that everybody liked to do, and it was a huge part of their lives. So as they're just kind of having a discussion about it, they meet this other dude, and he is incredibly knowledgeable about the Torah, the Bible. I can't remember what the actual words they used at that particular time then were. But he's incredibly knowledgeable and incredibly insightful as well. And that's one of the things that, in that time, the really, really smart people, the kind of intellectual elite of that time period in Jewish culture, were biblical scholars. They were considered the smartest people, and they used their brains to interpret the Bible or the Torah, or whatever it was that they had there. I'm just going to call it the Bible from now on because it's easier for me. So yeah, I mean that's who the smart people were, and a lot of people aspired to be as wise as them. A very, very famous hero from the Bible is King Solomon, and God asked King Solomon, what do you want? I will give you a gift for being so faithful. What do you want? And he just asked for wisdom. And so, like they're walking down the road with this guy, and he's incredibly smart. He's incredibly insightful, and he's able to kind of bring up ideas that they've never thought of before. And they're getting finally they're getting to their house in Emmaus, and they go, "Hey, why don't you join us for dinner? This has been such a great time. We would really love it if you would join us for dinner." And part of dinner was they would have like a big thing of bread, and you would break bread. And so as this person broke bread for them, which, if I remember correctly, was actually normally the head of the household's job, and it was again, I may be pulling this out of my ass, so don't yell at me for it. But it may be this is something a kind of a sign of honor of, hey, why don't you break the bread for us? And so as soon as they broke the bread, both of them recognized this is Jesus, the dude that was crucified a few days ago, and everyone keeps saying is risen from the dead. They realize, oh, this is Jesus, and then poof, he's gone. And again, the after the resurrection, the Romans and the Pharisees as well, because they were not particularly fond of Jesus either. And the Pharisees were basically kind of the religious rulers, effectively. And so the Pharisees didn't like Jesus, and the Romans didn't like Jesus, and a lot of people didn't like Jesus. It was remarkable. And so the disciples, Jesus' friends who had traveled with him, had been hiding in this upper room because they just watched their teacher and friend, who just went around saying things like, be nice to people, love the people that hate you, pray for them, try and ensure that good things happen to people that hate you. All of these really nice things. And also said things like, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. So he wasn't even like anti-establishment, down with the government. He was just a really nice guy. And they just watched him brutally murdered in the most horrific fashion ever. And it scared them. Because they're like, well, they're going to say that we were his friends. And I mean, look what they did to him. And we're nowhere near as nice of a dude as he is. We're dead. And so they're all hiding in this upper room. And so these two people from Emmaus run all the way to this upper room, which is in a different city. They come in and say, hey, we saw Jesus. He's alive. And all the disciples are going, you guys are nuts. I don't know what you're on. Maybe you're dehydrated. We don't know. But we watched him. We didn't just watch him die. We watched him die. Like, he's super dead. And the phrase doubting Thomas actually comes from this, because Thomas was one of the disciples, and he goes, unless I am able to feel the holes in his hands from where he was crucified, which technically they weren't in his hands. The actual thing is they would put them between the two bones in your arm, so you'd kind of hang up there, because your hand, there's nothing in your hand that will support the weight of your body. There just isn't. It's mostly kind of tendons and sinews, with some bones in there that aren't really connected to anything. It's all cartilage and stuff. So if they put stuff through your hands, you would just rip them out as soon as things got heavy. But Thomas goes, effectively, I won't believe it unless I can feel the holes in his hands and put my hand in the hole in his side, because the way that they showed that he was dead is they stabbed a spear into his heart through his rib cage. And when he bled, it says blood and watered flow, which is basically meant that your blood effectively, like the blood and plasma or something like that, splits. It's something that happens when you die, I believe. Again, it's been a long time since I've studied this particular aspect of Scripture. So, and that spear actually became famous in legends, called the Spear of Longinus, something like that. So it's technically a holy relic. So anyway, there's nothing to do with this story. So anyway, they come in. I am playing one of the upper room disciples. And I believe the last time I watched the movie, you can actually hear me saying, no, your grief has made you mad. I improvised that line. I was such a good actor. Then what happens is the way that they do it, I think, is really, really interesting, because we're sitting there and we're all just kind of huddled around and we're kind of arguing these people that are basically just saying, hey, we saw a ghost that wasn't a ghost. And we're going, there's no such thing as ghosts, morons. And so what happens is you watch as the camera does a close-up at, I think it was Peter's shoulder, who's, again, one of the disciples. And you see a hand just kind of appear there. And then the camera pulls back and Peter kind of looks up, and then Jesus is there. And then the rest of the scene is Jesus kind of giving a little sermon to us, and effectively, this is the point where the disciples went from, we all go and die, to, we're going to spread this message, and we don't care if we die, because it's more important that we spread this message. Whether or not you believe that is true, that is the context of the movie that I was in. So anyway, if you want to look it up, it's actually a good movie. I really enjoy it. But if the reason I'm talking about that is I used to be an actor, and one of the things that I still really enjoy doing is talking to other actors about the art of acting. Because I think a lot of people, at least a lot of the non-actors that I've talked to, don't quite understand, don't quite understand exactly what it is that kind of drives an actor. Like a lot of people think, oh, they just want to play pretend and have fun. And there are some actors that are like that, and that's perfectly fine. However, most of the actors that I went to school with, and a lot of the actors that I admire, they do it for the craft. They do it for the art of acting, which is this kind of really interesting thing where you have to basically put yourself into the mindset of a completely different person and understand things from their perspective so well that the actions that they have already decided to take and are written into a script become the most logical thing for your character to do at the time. And so it's a really, really interesting process. And creating characters, and I mentioned this in I think it was yesterday's video, the video the day before, I can't remember which one, because my brain doesn't work. But there's a lot of different methods that you can use to create characters, and they all have kind of strengths and weaknesses. I talked about a couple of them last time. And they're all just really interesting and fascinating. In the act of creating a character, in the act of kind of collaboration between two actors as they create scenes and stories and things like that, that is really, really interesting and fun. And it is one of the things that I miss the most about no longer being able to be an actor because of brain damage and all that other stuff. And I was I referenced, I can't remember if I referenced it in the video or not, but we were talking about the idea of method acting produces these really great performances, and I said, well, that's not 100% accurate. We don't know if it's method acting that is creating these great performances, or just method actors that are creating these great performances, and just so happens to be that method acting. And somebody brought up Heath Ledger was a method actor, and I went, not the method acting that we are fed today. Yes, he did use the method, but Aaron Eckhart, who played Two-Face in The Dark Knight Rises, or The Dark Knight, not Rises. He played Two-Face in The Dark Knight. There's only one scene that he and Heath Ledger have together, and it's when Two-Face, Harvey Dent, has just lost half of his face due to burns, and he's in the hospital recovering, and Joker is effectively threatened to blow up a hospital. And so Joker comes in, and they have this really kind of intimate scene where as soon as Aaron Eckhart sees Joker, because Joker is the person that kidnapped Harvey Dent, and he also kidnapped his fiancée Rachel Dawes, and he put them on opposite sides of the city, and he forced Batman to choose between the two of them, and Batman chose to go save Rachel, but Joker gave him the wrong address, and he ended up saving Harvey Dent instead, and Rachel died. And so Harvey blames Joker for his fiance's death. Very, very logical thing. And so as soon as he sees him, he starts trying to attack him and everything, and Joker just starts going, okay, yeah. And he starts in his kind of Joker spiel, 100 people die, nobody cares. But as soon as you say, I'm going to blow up a hospital, everybody goes crazy. And he basically is what turns Harvey Dent from a hero into a villain, because he kind of just feeds on his insecurities and the little bit of madness he's experiencing right there. And he goes, let's throw a little chaos in. And he gives Harvey Dent a gun and kind of puts the gun to his head, to Joker's head, and then he gives him a coin. He goes, and so Harvey, if I remember correctly, Harvey goes, you live, you die, because they have the one side is burnt and the other side isn't. He flips it, and it comes off heads. And so Joker is extremely happy because he's an agent of chaos and he's just created more chaos, random chaos, which is even better. And so he's super, super happy about that. Aaron Eckhart talks about how that scene came about. And this is something that a lot of people that have never done acting work before don't know. And that is when you are rehearsing scenes, depending on the medium, because each one's going to be a little bit different. Working on stage is very different than working on a movie, which is different from working on a TV show. But the same basic thing has to happen, which is you are given your script, and depending on how far along into production you are, you may be what's called off book before you even start what's called blocking, which is like figuring out where you stand in the scene and all the action in it. Or you may be using the script. Most of the shows that I did theater-based, we would not be off-book when we were blocking our scenes because we would write our blockings into our scripts. And we wouldn't be off-book for weeks. But you would come into the scene and you already have the dialogue written for you. And then a lot of times you will also have what are called stage directions written in, which is basically just the writer has an idea of how the scene is supposed to go in his head. And so he'll be like crosses over to door, slams door, things like that to kind of put in context what they're doing. Because if all you have is the dialogue, there's really no limits as to what you can do. There's a really common acting exercise where you are given a very, very bare bones script where it will be the version that I did in acting school was we were given a 4-line script, and each line was either one word or a very, very short phrase, and you would alternate who is saying each line. So line 1 was the first actor, line 2 was the second, line 3 was back to the first, line 4 was the second actor. And what our assignment was for the class was we had to take this script that had no direction, no context, no nothing. It was just basically 1 or 2 word lines 4 in a row that kind of related to each other. And we had to create a scene around that. And so we broke off into groups and we had to kind of sit there and go, okay, well, what do we want our theme for this to be? And what do we want? Why do we want to be saying these particular words and things like that? And it's a fun acting exercise because every single scene, especially since we were all theater kids, this was in college, we were all theater kids. And so we wanted to be original. We didn't want to take the obvious way out. So every one of us tried to make the most off the wall interpretation of these words that we possibly could. Which was super fun. It meant that I think we had like 3 or 4 different groups in that class because we had a somewhat larger class. I think we had like 8 or 9 students in that class. So we sat down into the scenes. We did like 3 or 4 different versions of the exact same dialogue, and it was really, really interesting. And that's kind of how the work and the art of acting really, really starts. Is you'll sit down generally with anybody that's in the scene will be there that's going to have their lines, and then you will also have the director there because they have their own vision of what's going to go on. And then depending on the medium, you might have other things like if you're in film, you're going to have camera men there, which the director, another thing that many people don't know, the director is also supposed to not really be an expert in photography, but should be knowledgeable enough to be able to say, I want to use this lens, I want to use this type of shot, I want to use this kind of setup for the camera. That's all part of being a film director, that you don't have to know it all being a theater director because they don't use cameras. So anyway, you'll sit down with your scene partners and the director, and then anyone else that might be involved in the scene. You might have a prop manager there if this is going to be a very prop heavy scene. You might have a fight choreographer or fight director there if there's going to be some kind of conflict in there. And then what you do, a lot of times, at least how I would do it, is we would start off by just reading the scene and kind of doing what felt natural. And so I would read my lines and I'd cross where I felt natural, and I would, interact with them where I felt that it made sense for my character. And then at the end, the director would go, okay, let's try this. And you slowly start changing things and start solidifying things so that it becomes something that is repeatable. Because that's generally the most important part of the rehearsal process, is the fact that you can repeat that same performance over and over and over again. For theater, that's essential because, especially once you get to the professional level, you're going to be doing, 30, 50, 100, 200 repetitions of that exact scene over the lifespan of the show while you're in that part. It is incredibly essential, especially if you have understudies that have to recreate your performance. For film, you generally have to reshoot scenes at least 3 or 4 times. Sometimes you'll have them a lot more to be able to get different camera angles and things like reaction shots and close-ups and all these other things. And then for television, again, you have, depending on whether you're using single camera or multi-camera, if you're filming in front of an audience or anything, repetition is really important. And so it starts off this kind of free-form thing where everyone's kind of giving their input, and eventually it will turn into, okay, this is where I'm going to stand, and this is my mark, and this is what I'm going to do here, and this is what I'm going to do there. And it's a really interesting process because part of it is kind of technical based. Okay, well, if I stand here, I'm not going to be under an individual light, and for this particular scene, I need to be lit in this particular way. So I need to move it here, and we need to come up for a reason why I need to move it here. Or right now, the scene seems unbalanced. Everyone is on the right side of the stage, and we're not using the left side of the stage at all. So we need to have a reason for people to go to the other side of the stage. There are mechanical aspects to it. Same is true of filming. Okay, well, if I want to get this shot, we have these things in the way. So if we move you this way and we turn you this way, we can get a better shot, or the lighting is better here, or the sight lines are better in this particular thing. So there's a mechanical aspect that requires actually knowledge of how the technical aspects of theater or film or television work. But then there is also the motivational factor and the art of acting, where you have to sit there and go, well, the reason that my character is saying this is because they're motivated by this particular emotion at this particular time, and they chose these particular words because they think it will convey this particular aspect. When I was in college, whenever I would do a scene for like a grade, I would have 2 different copies, or technically 3 copies of the script, because I'd have to turn in 2 copies to my director. And the reason I had to turn in 2 copies is because I would mark them up unbelievably complex, because one would have like the story beats, and you would have to sit there and go, okay, this is where this beat ends and this is where the next one begins, and you also would have to one of the phrases I will never forget, and I don't know why, but every line has to have an active actable verb. I want to blank, I want to blank, I want to do something, and every line has to have, and that's effectively what motivation is every line has a motivation behind it. There has to be a desire that the line that you're saying does something. It has to be based on what your character is feeling and thinking in their experiences. And then I'd also have another one that would have all my stage directions and other things like that written on it. And eventually, we'd also have to do like lighting plots and stuff like that. Like, it was actually a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my acting class in college. I hated everything else about college, and I still do. Despise education in general. Not like educators. Quite a few of my friends are in academia, but I just hated going to class all throughout elementary and middle school and high school. I hated it. I hated it in college. I hated it when I went back to college. It was one of the reasons I went to an online school, so I didn't have to go to stupid classes, and I still didn't like it when I was doing it online. Those are the things that I really enjoyed. And going back to the Heath Ledger story, basically what happened, because Heath Ledger was method, but he wasn't quite the extreme method that we see nowadays. And so what it was when he came on stage, the director hadn't started doing anything. They were basically setting cameras up, and this is something that happens in film a lot. Film is a lot of waiting around for like a couple minutes of actual work, and then sitting back while everything else gets set up again. Each different shot takes like 10 or 20 minutes minimum to set up by moving the cameras around and everything like that. And then you block the scene, and then, but actors for a lot of times are just sitting on their asses doing nothing on set. Because it's just how film works. The scene that I was in, again, it's barely 10 minutes long, We were on set for 9 hours for that. And it took, I think, 2.5 or 3 hours for everyone to get through makeup and wardrobe. So 6 hours, we are just sitting on set doing nothing. With these brief, like 5 to 10, because they wouldn't shoot the entire scene as one shot. The cameras would be rolling for like 3 or 4 minutes, and then cut, reset, redo this. Maybe we'll do the lines again. Maybe we'll do a different lines. Maybe we'll get a different setup for it. But it's a lot of waiting around. So what happens with Heath Ledger and Aaron Eckhart is Heath Ledger comes in and he's in character already. So he's in the corner, according to Aaron Eckhart, he's in the corner like laughing and talking to himself, because that's what he felt that his character would do. And then the director kind of got involved, and as far as I can tell, this particular director kind of understood the talent of Heath Ledger and Aaron Eckhart. And so, at least in this scene, his job was basically to kind of put them together and kind of focus their energy as much as he could, but he didn't do a lot of active directing. He wasn't going, okay, Heath, can you give me this? Or Aaron, can you do this instead? For the most part, it was Heath and Aaron just kind of working the scene out together. And they, according to Aaron Eckhart, they never spoke to each other. They never went, hey, that was really good. Can we try it this way? They just kind of improvised off each other, and they just kind of got into their characters and would just redo the scene over and over again until they created something that felt really good. And if you've ever seen that scene in The Dark Knight, it is from an acting perspective, it is a brilliant scene. It really, really is, because you have two people that are completely, utterly lost in their characters, that are filming an insanely emotional scene. And they're so kind of into it, and everything about it is just really kind of magical from an acting perspective. I don't know what it's like for non-actors to watch it, just to watch these two people just kind of get mad at each other and then slowly go insane together. But after all of that was done, they're done with everything. They were both walking back to their trailers. Which another thing a lot of people don't realize, the reason actors have trailers is they're basically playpens for actors. Because again, it's a lot of just sitting around and waiting for everybody else on set to get their stuff done. Like the lighting has to be done, the sound has to be set up, and the props person has to come in. And like there's so much work that goes up into setting a scene, the actors are just sitting there doing nothing. And so a lot of times, if it's going to be a really long setup, they'll send them back to their trailers, not because they can't interact with the rabble and no, it's because it is a small place where we can be ensured that they're going to remain there. And so when we do need them, we can just go and get them. So they're going back to their trailers, and Heath just kind of turns and looks at Aaron and goes, "That was acting." And Aaron just kind of, yep, because that is what acting is. And that's what I loved about acting, was really connecting with your scene partner and creating raw emotion that isn't yours. Like, you are not the characters that you portray. As much as method actors are going, no, I'm Batman. You're not, and you're never going to be. And that's the whole point of acting, is you are learning something about another person who has a very different experience from you that you will never in your life have, hopefully. A lot of things that happen in movies and that I would never want someone to go through. But that's the point of acting, and that's the thing that I used to love about it. We're just getting lost in. And luckily for me, I have some extremely talented friends that I do RPGs with. And not this past weekend, but the one before, during our Tears of the Realm, my Zelda RPG that I run. There is one of my cast members is this incredible woman named Kiri Callaghan. Who I've talked about before. There's a video that I just talk about how awesome she is from like a decade ago. And that was before we became friends. So it's me and Kiri, and Kiri's character is this foundling that grew up in this secret library and was kind of raised by all the monks there. And the monks realize, spoiler alert, the monks realize that bad things are happening in the world, and they're afraid like an extinction event is going to happen, which has happened in history before. And basically what the library does is they just close the library off and hide it from everybody and just try to survive. Well, Kiri's character, I know, specifically left the library to gain more information for the library. And it was with the monk's blessing that she did that. But they realize that they're going to close it, and they're not going to open their doors for another 100 years because the people that live there are extremely long-lived. And so she's basically asked to come back and just abandon all of her new friends and the entirety of the world out there. And she makes the decision that, no, I'm not going to let I'm not going to let the world just end. If the world's going to end, it's going to be because I failed, not because it was just an inevitability. And so one of the people that helped raise her, because she was raised by like 20 or 30 monks. One of the people that helped raise her is this dude named Johann, who I introduced to the characters by coming out in this like really big robe that no one could see. And he goes, well, you know, there is a book. It is on a very high shelf, and I do not think I can get to it. I wish I had a way for something to get on a high shelf and get my book for me. Oh, wait! I know! Because the character's name is I Know, and that was their little joke. That we actually made up, like, I made up on the spot there, and Kiri, being the prolific actor that she is, went along with it and just kind of yes-anded it. And so we instantly kind of created this bond. And I didn't even have a name for the character at then. And so Kiri goes, is this someone that I know? I said, absolutely. I said, do you have a name for them? I said, the name is up to you. She said, Johann! I'm like, oh, I know, it's so nice. Oh, and Aki. Aki is a little Arctic fox peck. Aki, is very nice to meet you as well. Hello, everybody, friends of I Know. I am Johann. I am one of the people that raised I Know. And she's so amazing, and she jumps very good. It's a wonderful thing. Because all of these monks apparently have these strange Eastern European accents, because that's just the accent that Kiri chose for her character, and it's really great. So anyway, we go through the whole plot of them being in this place, eventually get to the point where Aino decides to escape on her own, because because the library is supposed to be secret, they can't let anyone that knows about the library leave. As is the trope. And so Aino decides that she's going to leave. And Johann comes, kind of catches her in the act, and goes, what do you need me to do? And so they go and create a lot of chaos to get all of the monks into one area of the library, and they escape out the back door, effectively. And when they get to the end, Johann, which I've already decided this long before, Johann has this idea that if he can get Aino's friends out so that they're not locked up here, he can convince Aino, hey, your friends are really, really talented. They will definitely be able to save the world, but you can stay here with us. So that, because what's going to happen is the library is going to close its door for 100 years. Whether the world is saved or not, they are completely cut off from outside society. They don't know what's going on. So if the world doesn't end, they won't know. And so Johann has basically went, well, I don't want, because she'll be dead by the time they open the gates again. So Johann has this idea, well, we'll get your friends out. They can go save the world. And then you can stay in here with us. And then we can spend the next, few years eventually convincing them, hey, maybe the world didn't end. And so that was his plan. Was just going to get them out and go, okay, no, it's great. And now you can stay here because your friends are now safe. They're not going to be trapped in the library. And they will, of course, save the world because they are your friends. And anyone that considers you a friend must be very, very useful. Because you are a very useful person, very good at what you do. And so we have this insanely, completely improvised, touching scene where Johann knows this isn't going to work, but he's not willing to admit it. And so instead of like asking her, going, "Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't you stay?" and maybe he just says everything as if it's a foregone conclusion. No, like, it's perfectly great. Now you can come back, and don't worry. I will. We can blame the escape attempt on me. Like I've already gotten in trouble with the ruling council. They will give me slap on the wrist and it'll be fine. And besides, we'll all be here with plenty of time. Like if they ground me for like 20 years, we still have 80 more years before we can go anywhere. So it doesn't really mean anything. And so he's sitting. He's like, okay, let's go. And Aino and Kiri, as Aino, just kind of. No, I have to go with my friends. But no, see, we are going to close the library, and that means I will never see you again, because 100 years you are not like us. You will die in that. So you need to stay with us. You can't live. And she goes, I'm very sorry, but I can't let my friends do this on their own. They need my help. No, they will be perfectly fine without you. You can stay here because you are family, and they are not family. They are your good friends, and I'm very happy for them, but you are family, and that means that you cannot just go away and never see me again and not have me see you. And it is this beautiful, amazing scene where it's just them going, I know, just kind of repeatedly. And they both know that this isn't going to happen, but they also both know that they need to go through this process. They need to say the lies and kind of call out the lies, because if they don't, neither one of them will be able to deal with it. And so we're both basically in tears. Talking at characters like Johann has existed for like a week and a half at this point. The character did not exist until they kind of walked into the library and I just chose a voice. And now we have these two characters that we've created this incredible backstory that of all the different monks that kind of helped raise Aino, Johann was the one that was basically the closest to her. Because he's kind of the oddball with the rest of the monks as well, where he likes a little bit of chaos and he likes a little bit of nonsense happening. The rest of the monks are very orderly, and nonsense means things get forgotten, and we're all about preserving knowledge. And this was all created with just yes ands and just both of us knowing each other as actors. And it was this beautiful, amazing scene. And at the very end, Johann goes, 2 years. 2 years, I'll find a way to open this library, and you make sure you are at the door. You will be at the door when I open it. And so they have this very touching goodbye, and then the library itself does seal itself off, and it is now completely cut off, effectively from reality. They haven't learned how all the mechanics of the library works. There's kind of a magical aspect to it, so it is quite literally shut off from existence. But anyway, yeah, like that's the stuff that I love. And I think good Dungeons and Dragons can have that because it is kind of an improvisational storytelling method. If you are willing to do that. And that is not something that everyone can do, nor is it something that everyone wants to do. Getting in touch with emotions like that is not fun for some people, because a lot of times you have to bring up memories that are very painful in order to be able to kind of understand, or even not like full on memories, but you have to experience very painful emotions. Imagine if someone that you had seen grown from a tiny little baby up to adulthood has just told you, hey, I'm never going to see you again for the rest of your life and the rest of my life. This is the very last time we are ever going to speak. Like, that is an incredibly powerful moment, especially when it's not like the ending of the relationship is not because you had a fight or either of you are choosing this to happen. It is because a situation has been created where you two are just never going to see each other again. And so it's this incredibly powerful emotional thing, and some people can do that and some people can't. Some people don't like emotions getting entangled with D&D other than, like happiness and joy. They don't want to feel sadness, they don't want to feel remorse or nostalgia or homesickness or anything like that. They want to have fun. So yeah. Anyway, the reason that I wanted to talk about this particular topic is I would like, because I did a series a while ago where I talked about things that you can do. If I remember correctly, things you could do as a dungeon master to help create different characters, even if you are not kind of skilled with accents and things like that. Because most people, when they think of something like Matt Mercer or Brennan Lee Mulligan or any of those people, they think that to be a good dungeon master, you have to be able to do all these different voices and accents, and you really don't. You can use just your natural voice without any kind of vocal training or anything like that, and simply by changing your body structure a little bit, like if you hunch over when you do a particular character, your voice will change because the mechanics of how your body creates sound will change. Or if you puff out your chest and do things like this, your voice will change and your mannerism will change. You look down your nose at someone, you look over the top of your eyes at someone, things like that are all things that you can do to create different characters without needing a degree in acting. And so I did a series where I kind of talked about stuff like that. But I'm thinking I would like to do a series specifically aimed at players as opposed to DMs about basically acting tips to help create your characters and using things like Stanislavski's system. Probably not the method, because again, the method in and of itself involves you actually putting yourself in situations to feel what your character feels. And I just don't think that's safe for Dungeons and Dragons, but maybe looking into like the Meisner method and other stuff like that, just to kind of talk about acting techniques that you can use as a role player to create more interesting, realistic, and emotion-filled characters. I think that might be a fun thing. And again, it's possible that I've tried doing this before, or I've done it before and I just can't remember. So anyone that's been watching the channel a lot, if I actually have done this before, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll remember to do something different. But again, that was the thing that I loved most about being an actor, was just collaborating with other people to create stories. And it really is a unique experience. There's nothing that compares with it. So we'll see. Who knows? Again, I still have one more, and I haven't forgot about it. I still have one more designing new dragons to do for 13th Age. And then I need to pick my next RPG for discovering new dragons. So I haven't forgot about that stuff. Like I said, this daily vlogging thing is not meant to replace those stuff. It's just it had become so difficult for me to put those videos out on a regular basis, and the daily vlogging thing is help giving me structure in my life. That I decided to do both when I can. So anyway, that's gonna be all for me today, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, bye bye.